The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Kalshi. Make real money predicting sports. Kalshi is available in all 50 states. You also get $20 for free with the promo code SGPN. That's Kalshi, promo code SGPN. And welcome, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Currently Saturday afternoon, January 17th, around noon Eastern. I'm always Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Time to get into our second Aussie Open preview episode. Did the men's episode last night at around 3 in the morning or so, but we still have the women to do, so we're going to get into the women's Aussie Open in a few minutes. Before we get into the actual breakdown of the upcoming Grand Slam, a reminder, support the show by subscribing, and YouTube. Reminder, you also find the podcast available on Spotify or Apple. So a couple ways to support the show. You can either subscribe on YouTube, or leave a rating and review on Spotify or Apple. Plus, a reminder, we have a discount code on the SGPN merch store. So new year, new gear. SGPN merch store has a bunch of new items for the new year. And right now, get 10% off everything with the promo code 2026. So once again, a lot of tennis options with shirts, sweatshirts, t-shirts, mugs. So recommend you'll check out the different options we have, different colors, etc. Think you'll like the selection. But either way, point is, if you want to get anything on the merch store, use the code 2026 at checkout for 10% off everything in the merch store. So before we get into any of the actual outrights and quarter stuff for the Aussie Open, want to briefly recap what happened on the women's side for the last couple of days, mainly what happened in Adelaide and in Hobart. So starting off with Adelaide, you ended up seeing Mboko make a great run to the final, but then Andreeva buried her in the final, as Andreeva only dropped 4 games. Andreeva's in great form. I'll see if it carries over into the Australian Open, but either way, Andreeva definitely looked dialed in the entire way through, and it looked like it was going to be a good match on paper. It really wasn't, as Mboko only won 4 games, and Andreeva did not drop a single set in the entire tournament. So nice job by Andreeva, who's only 18 years old. I forgot how old Andreeva is. She 18 years old? I'm trying to remember exactly how old she is. But she is 18 years old, and she's already a phenomenal player. She has not really had the exact amount of Grand Slam success that we were expecting at this point in her career. But then again, once again, she's 18 years old. So we'll see if this is maybe the year where she finally pieces it together and maybe wins a Grand Slam title. We'll see what happens. But either way, Andreeva did a great job coasting, not dropping a single set, and burying Mboko in the final. And as for the other event, that was a 500 in Adelaide. This was a 250 in Hobart. Nice Cinderella run by Kochi Aredo, and she is ranked 80th in the world qualifier in the event, and she ran the table. So nice job by her. In fact, she only dropped 1 set in the entire tournament. She won 3 qualifying matches, then dropped a set to Lee in the first round, and then beat everybody in straight sets. Beat Bonder, beat Ruzic, and beat Jovic in the final, all in straight sets. So nice job by her. And if you're looking at the actual odds of that match, she was plus 250, and she won in straight sets. So nice job there. 2 pretty anticlimactic finals. This one wasn't as bad as the Andreeva one. This one was 6-4, 6-4. So at least it was somewhat close, but nice run by the qualifier to only drop 1 set in the entire event, including qualifying, as the Italian got the job done and was able to win a title. No lock and dog picks to recap, by the way, because we recapped that in the last episode for the men's, but a reminder, we did end up winning the Makic outright at 16-1, so that went well, and hopefully we end up cashing an outright in the women's event as well. Now, nothing else to really talk about, so we're going to dive into the actual, once again, quarter odds now for the Australian Open. Starting off, though, with the recent winners, Keys. Sure, people forgot. Keys is defending champion after she was able to beat Sabalenka and Swiatek in the same event. She got the job done as she ended up winning the title. Sabalenka beat Zhang the year prior, and Sabalenka beat Rybakina the year before that. So Sabalenka is a 2-time champion. She was going for the three-peat, and Keys had other ideas. But either way, point is Sabalenka is the prohibitive favorite in the event based on the actual form that she's been in, number 1 ranked in the world, and the fact that she also is a 2-time champion, 3 straight-time finalist. So starting off with the first quarter, right on cue, Sabalenka is going to be in this quarter as she is around minus 230. I'm going to use DraftKings for the read-off here. but I did shop around. I found different prices, but I'll use DraftKings just for the default odds reading. So Sabalenka minus 230, Umboko's plus 550, Kostyuk is 650. Paolini, 12-1. Alexandrova, 14-1. Raducanu at 16-1. Jovic, 22-1. Towson is 28-1. Basically, all that's worth talking about. So the question is pretty simple. Do I think Sabalenka will make it back to the semis? Yes, I do. I think the draw is pretty favorable. I think that if the main person who's ranked in your immediate section is Raducanu, who I think we all know my thoughts on at this point. I think she's highly overrated. Yes, she occasionally has some good performances. It's mainly been a bunch of nothingness since she had the random dream run in the U.S. Open years ago. She hasn't won a title since, and the fact is Raducanu has really not done much in general, not to mention the fact she's always injured, so I'm not sure if her fitness will hold up over the course of the event. But either way, Raducanu, not interested in. I think Sabalenka should make it by her. And Towson, I know, can be a bit tricky. She has a match against Umboko. Umboko will see if she's tired or not after making it all the way to the final in Adelaide. But either way, Sabalenka is great on the courts here. Good enough for me. I found 175, but I am going to go with Umboko as well, only because I found a great price. I mean, Sabalenka, I just read off, was minus 230. I found a 175, so I'll take that with the price differential. Umboko, I said, was at 550. I found an 8-1. So the fact that I got an extra $2.50, I think was just good enough value to take. So even though I don't really know how much faith I have in Umboko to actually make it to the semis, I think 8-1 is a good price. And I do think that you can make the argument that you should be around 6-1, give or take. So I'll go for the flyer for the value. Give me Umboko plus 800 as my wild card flyer for the first quarter. Moving on to the second quarter. This is probably the most difficult quarter to actually pick. You could argue this one or the third quarter, but this is definitely going to be a fun one. So Goff is plus 180. Andreeva off the title is plus 240. Mukova is at 550. Svitolina is 6-1. Schneider is at 9-1. Vondrousova is at 18-1. And Navarro's at 18-1 as well. So there's a bunch of talent in this quarter, and it is definitely the most stacked quarter of any of them. So we know Goff has been solid in general, multiple-time Grand Slam winner. Andreeva just won without dropping a single set in the entire tournament. She's in great form. Mukova, we know, is dangerous when healthy. Svitolina did just win a title as well. We know Schneider can be dangerous on hard court. Vondrousova can be dangerous in general. And Navarro, we know, can be good as well. So a lot of players here who can, in theory, have a path to make it into the semis. If you want to mention Ila, Sakari at 30-1, Krajikova at 40-1, you can. But the point is, I do see a very just talented quarter in general. So I do think a couple of people can find a way to win it. And I'm going to pick a couple of them to win it. So I'm not going to go with only one or two people. I picked three. I do think this is going to be an open quarter. I think there are a couple of potential solutions, and I do think that going for three people is the best approach. So for starters, I will go with Goff at 180. I do think that her game is still solid. We saw her beat Swiatek handily a couple weeks ago, and I do think that Goff has the game, assuming her serve doesn't totally betray her, which is a big if. I'm aware of it. But I do think that her performance in the United Cup is definitely impressive. Had a bad start, losing to Buzas, but was able to beat Sakari in straight sets and Swiatek in straight sets. So she figured it out, and I think her draw is pretty favorable as well. So I didn't mind Goff at this price. I do think you can make the argument that Goff can be the player with the highest upside in this section, but either way, the immediate draw is really not that bad. I think she would beat Vondrousova, and I do think that Mukova taking on Navarro in the same immediate section is definitely a good deal for Goff, so I do think that should help out. But either way, I'll go with Goff, but not by herself in this quarter. I will throw in Andreeva at plus 275. Yes, I know that it's not exactly fun to back players who just won a title the weekend prior, but said before, she did not drop a set in the entire event. Really no stress at all, and I do think that Andreeva is playing some great tennis right now. And if she's going to have that official, I'd say, emergence as a superstar, I do think it could start here. So I do think Andreeva at plus 275 is worth something. But I am going to go with a long shot flyer. I'm going to skip Mukova. I wasn't a fan of the immediate section with Navarro. followed by Goff. And the fact is, Mukova can still have some injury issues, which flare up every now and then. But I mentioned before, Svitolina was at 6-1. I found 13-1 on BetRivers, so I do like the idea of getting a 6-1 shot in one book at 13-1. So I'll go for the value there. Not to mention the fact that Svitolina did just win a title a couple weeks ago. So Svitolina was able to win in Auckland. So the fact is, I do think after winning an entire event, only dropping one set, shows you that she's in pretty good form. Yes, I am aware that the strength of schedule in that event was not exactly that high, but still, I like how she's playing. I think 13-1 is a good shot for a flyer, but I am going to go three people in that second quarter. Once again, Goff at plus 180, Andreeva at plus 275, and I will go with Svitolina as my long shot solely based on the price. I didn't like it at 6-1 or 8-1, but 13-1 is too good to pass up on. So I'll go for Svitolina at 13-1 to wrap up the second quarter. Before we get into the other two quarters, a reminder they're brought to you by our sponsor, AVO. So if you want to make more money betting on sports, use AVO. That's AVO. So it's the best sports betting tool. Helps you make money every time when you decide to place bets, courtesy of Arbitrage and Plus EV Opportunities, which they will present to you faster than the competitors. But if you want to check out what Arbitrage actually is, then you can check out the step-by-step video guides they have to give you a tutorial. So once again, they can teach you how to place some bets with guaranteed profit. But a reminder, if you want to get started, go to avo.bet. Use the code SGPN for $18 off. That's avo.bet, code SGPN for $18 off your purchase. We're also brought to you by Kalshi. So if you want to make money betting on some prediction market stuff, you can. Real money prediction market available in all 50 states. And a reminder that you can trade tons of markets in sports, the NFL, college football, college basketball, NBA, NHL, and more. Plus, you can also trade props like first touchdowns. Besides sports, they have other options as well, like politics and entertainment and even the weather. And a reminder, if you are new to Kalshi, get a nice sign-up deal with us. So if you use the code SGPN to sign up, get $20 for free when you sign up. So that's Kalshi, Kalshi, code SGPN, for a free $20 at sign-up. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished going through the first two quarters in the Aussie Open for the women's side. Time to move on into the third quarter. So for this quarter, this is definitely going to be a very unpredictable one. The favorite is Anisimova at plus 125. Keys is at 350. Pegula is at 4-1. Noskova is at 7-1. Beddoes is at 12-1. Layla is at 12-1. Kessler 25-1. You kind of get the point. So not as much depth in this quarter. If you want to go for a long shot, you can, in theory, go for Ostapenko at 50-1. I will not do that. She had some injury issues right before the event, but if you want to go for her, that is available at 50-1. Now, Anisimova is, of course, a worthy favorite based on her performances last year in Grand Slams and the fact that we know that she has a game that translates well to hard courts. However, she has not been great recently. So we saw her lose to Sabalenka in the WTA finals last year, lost an exhibition to Pegula, then beat Pegula in an exhibition right after, but showed up in Brisbane, beat Birrell, and then ended up losing to Kostyuk in straight sets. So not much of a sample for Anisimova in 2026, and the fact is I do think you make the argument that even though she should be favored in the quarter, this is a bit cheap at 125. I mean, there's some talent here in the immediate section and the quarter in general. You are looking at the defending champion in her quarter with Keys. Yes, I know Keys did lose to Zarazua in the U.S. Open first round, so Keys, after winning the Aussie Open, didn't really do much besides that in the Grand Slams, but I do think that Keys can be dangerous, and of course, you're looking at Pegula, who's also solid in general, and the point is, I think Anisimova is a bit too cheap, so I'm not going to take her. I think that Anisimova should be, in my opinion, 175. I find it a bit interesting that her price is that cheap. I don't agree with it, so I'll pass on Anisimova there. I don't see much value. Now, for Keys, I understand that she's always streaky, and it would be a classic Keys moment if she ended up winning the Grand Slam here last year and then immediately losing in the first or second round. That's a classic Keys move, but I do think 5-1 is a good price. So once again, I read it off as 350. I found 5-1. Good price, good enough for me. I'll go for defending champion to make it back to the semis at 5-1. But I am going to go with somebody else. I will not go for Pegula. Have not been a fan of her form lately. But I am going to go with a player who I think is a bit underrated in this section and a player who I think has a good draw in general. So I'm going to go with Noskova. I found 10-1. I think that she is a solid overall player. A reminder, she beat Swiatek in the Aussie Open previously. So we've seen her step up in big spots in this event before. She has not really pieced it together for a semifinal appearance, but I do think that the draw is very generous for her. In the same immediate section as Ostapenko, who might be injured, so once again could be a decent deal for her. Same half as Anisimova. Will Anisimova lose to Kenin or Stearns? Probably not, but who knows. Point is, though, 10-1, I think is appealing. Thought Pegula was a bit too cheap, as DraftKings had her at 4-1. So instead of doing that, I will skip her and I will skip Anisimova. Give me Keys at 5-1 and give me Noskova at 10-1 as my two choices for the third quarter. Moving on to the fourth quarter. This is the Swiatek quarter. Now, for the actual odds here, Swiatek is plus 140. Rybakina is at 2-1. Osaka is at 7-1. Bencic, who's been in good form, is at 8-1. You have Mertens, who's at 18-1. And you have Valentova at 22-1. Samsonova, 28-1. Kalinskaya, 28-1. You kind of get the point. So for the actual path in itself, Swiatek, we know, has really not had much success in the grand scheme of things at the Australian Open. So we'll see if she can finally piece it together this time around. Her draw, though, in the immediate section is pretty good. Same half as Osaka. I know that Osaka can occasionally play well. I am extremely low on Osaka in futures anyway, because I have no faith in her piecing it together. And so far, that's worked out for me. So I do think that even though Swiatek has not been that great in the Australian Open in the past, I think 150 is a good price based on her draw and how weak the bottom half of the section is. So I'll go for Swiatek at plus 150 for the value there. I will go Rybakina at 8-1 as well. I think that Rybakina, even though her draw is tougher than once against Swiatek, I do think her draw is not that bad. I do think that in general, we know the upside is definitely there for her, and we know that Rybakina is a former finalist. Yes, we also know that she can easily punt a match to anybody if the unforced error count gets high, and she might choke a lead in the third set. We've seen that before, but I think 2-1 is a good price for a very solid hardcore player, so I do think that is worth something. Now, the real question remaining was whether or not I was going to take Bencic, because she was able to beat Swiatek in the United Cup, and she did look very sharp in the United Cup. So that could have been a potential option. And you know what? I think I am going to do it. I think Bencic's odds are just too solid. I do want to quickly see if I could find better odds because I decided to actually add her at the last minute. So I want to quickly check if I could find a better price. So sorry, let me just quickly see if I can find anything better than 8-1 for Bencic, because I am intrigued by her in the spot. I see 7-1 there. I think 8-1 is the best we're going to get. So I'll go for 8-1 on Bencic as well. Think that she has the overall game to beat Swiatek. I mean, we literally saw it a couple weeks ago. So I do think that if you want to argue for a player who can pull off the surprise quarter winner, I think it's her, at least based on what we've seen over the last couple of months. We saw her have a good run towards the back half of last year after taking some time off. And the fact is, Bencic is still a solid overall player. I think 8-1 is a good price for her personally. So once again, we're going to go with a couple of favorites, but we're going to blend it in with a couple of long shots as well. And hopefully we end up doing well in the quarters. Moving on to the outrights to actually win the event. For the odds here, you have Sabalenka as the favorite at 185. Swiatek's 550, Anisimova 750, Rybakina 8-1, Goff 10-1, Andreeva 16-1, Osaka 25-1, Keys 30-1 to repeat, Kutsuk 35-1. You have Mboko 35-1, Bencic 40-1, Pegula 40-1, Mukova 50-1, Paolini 50-1, Svitolina is at 65-1, Raducanu is at 80-1. You kind of get the point. So for the outright, simply put, I am going to go pretty chalky, or at least I am going to go with some of the favorites. I'm not taking Swiatek, even though I did pick her to win the quarter. She has still not shown enough in the Aussie Open in the past for me to actually trust her for a full outright to win the event. So I'm not going to do it. Instead, of course, give me Sabalenka at 2-1. 3 straight final appearances, 2 titles, and she lost last year against Keys. Should be motivated to get another title under her belt. I think 2-1 is a good price. I'll go for her in that one. However, I am going to go with another option that I think is intriguing. Yes, I know Rybakina can lose to anybody. I said this before, and I know that she's in the same quarter as Bencic and Swiatek, but I do think her upside's definitely there on hard court. I think that she could, in theory, beat Sabalenka on hard court. Swiatek, I'm not fully sold on in general on the courts here in Australia, so I did pick her for the sake of the draw, but I do think that Rybakina has the highest upside of the three that I gave out to win the quarter in that quarter. I'll go for Rybakina 13-1 as my second choice. And for my last choice, I am going to go with Andreeva at 16-1. Fatigue, you could argue, is an issue, but she coasted throughout the entire event, so I don't know if I fully agree with that. Andreeva's in the same quarter as Goff and Svitolina. Not exactly that easy, but Andreeva's been in great form. If she's going to be as good as we think she's going to be, maybe that starts now. So I think 16-1 is a good price for a player who can, in theory, be a future top 3 player in the world. And if she's going to piece it together like she did in Adelaide over the last week, 16-1 is a good number. So I'll take that as my third choice and my last choice for the Women's Aussie Open. So once again, the outright picks for the Australian Open for the women's side, we're going to go with Sabalenka at 2-1. We're going to go with Rybakina at 13-1. And we're going to go with Andreeva at 16-1. So wrap it up for the hour. It's time to go on into the lock and dog picks. Before we get into the lock and dog, a reminder, they're brought to you by our sponsor, Arnold Fantasy. If you want to play pick entries, chance to win 5,000 times your entry to bring the playoff magic all playoffs along. Every weekend, check out the Underdog app during the playoffs to see what promos are waiting for you, profit boosts, etc. Definitely a lot of those going around. And if you are new to Underdog, great offer for new customers. Play just $5. $75 in bonus funds when you sign up with the promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. They've been great this NFL season, especially on props. Check them out for different sports as well. They have golf, they have college basketball, they have college football, a lot of model stuff as well. So if you want to experiment with models, think you'll definitely enjoy what they have to offer. You can do it in a couple of ways. Build your own from scratch, copy one for the leaderboard, or you go to Rhythm's house model, give you plays by itself. So a couple of ways to get into the model building process for sports betting. I think you'll like the options there with Rhythm. If you want to go premium, though, with your membership, use the code SGPN25 when you download the app, and you'll get 25% off your first month. That's Rhythm, RATHMM, code SGPN for 25 or code SGPN25 for 25% off your first month. That's Rhythm, code SGPN25 for a quarter off your first month at Rhythm. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finish going through the outrights for the Women's Aussie Open. Time to go on into the lock and dog picks. For the lock, I'm going to go to a matchup between Mukova and Christian. I'm going to go with Christian team total under 8.5 games at -114. Mukova has buried her in every head-to-head meeting. It has not been close. Christian, in the 3 meetings, has never won more. Christian has never won more than 5 games. So the fact is, you're looking at Christian, who has gotten buried by Mukova on 3 separate occasions. She has never won more than 5 games in any of the 3 meetings against Mukova, and her team totals at 8.5. We know Mukova, when healthy, is very dangerous on hard court. Christian, not so much. The fact is, I do think Mukova, with the weapons that she has, is simply too good. We saw Mukova beat Rybakina in Brisbane, so she's in good form. I think that Christian is, simply put, a good matchup for Mukova. And based on history and with the amount of, I'd say, lopsided matches we've seen between the two of them, I think that this should be a very one-sided affair. Give me Christian to get killed again. Give me Christian team total under 8.5 as my lock against Mukova at -114. For the dog, I'm going to go to a spread, actually. I'm going to go to the matchup between Maria and Marchenko. And for this one, I am going to go with Maria plus the 3.5 games here at +106. Now, Maria, we know, is older, and the fact is she has a very unique style. She's pretty much a slice-only player, which makes her tough to prepare for. But they played about a year ago, and Maria did win the only hard-court meeting in straight sets. So it is a bit dated, but that's the only head-to-head meeting we have. And Maria went outright, and now she's getting 3.5 games. Now, Marchenko is a pretty interesting young player, but the fact is she's never played in a Grand Slam match before. Nerves can play a factor. She also has been mainly a futures and qualifying player, so this is a bit of a step up here. I do think that Maria will do a good job of forcing the youngster to hit extra shots. And I do think that can result in a bunch of errors for the young player if nerves start to play a factor. But the fact is, you're going to give me a player who already beat this opponent in straight sets on hard court, and now she's getting 3.5 games. You have a solid amount of experience advantage with Maria here. Marchenko is the better player, but will she piece it together? I'm not sure about that, so I do think that there's some value with the dog here. Maria might not be an amazing player, but I do think that she's crafty, and I think she should be able to get enough shots in play to force the young player into mistakes, and I do think that can leave the door open for maybe an outright win. But I think 3.5 games is too many, especially at this price. Give me Maria plus 3.5 as my dog for the show. So once again, the lock and dog. The lock's going to be on Christian. Team total under 8.5 against Mukova at -114. For the dog, I'm going to go with Maria plus 3.5 games against Marchenko at plus 106. Anyways, to wrap it up for the show, back once again for the second round of the Aussie Open on the men's side. Till next time, like, subscribe on YouTube, leave a rating and review on Spotify or Apple. Find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio. Till next time.